The famous Sphinx of Giza is one of the most enigmatic monuments of ancient Egypt. It is built from a single block of natural rock, measuring 57 meters in length and almost 20 meters in height. It seems that beneath it there are several hidden chambers that hold the knowledge of a lost civilization. There has been talk of several entrances, one supposedly above the head, and another behind the Sphinx. And if they have found anything, they certainly haven't made it public. Few know that for much of its history, it has remained hidden beneath the sands of the desert. According to legend, in the year 1400 BC, Pharaoh Thutmose IV, when he was still a prince, lay down in the shadow of the Sphinx's head, which was the only part that protruded from the sand at the time. One day the Sphinx spoke to him in a dream, telling him that if he unearthed her, she would give him the crown of Egypt. And so he did. Hundreds of years later, the sands of the desert covered it again. This time it was Giovanni Battista Caviglia who, between the years 1816 and 1818, took charge of excavating it once more. There is much evidence that suggests the Sphinx is older than the dating given by official archaeology. One of them is the inventory stele, erected by Pharaoh Khufu and discovered by Auguste Mariette, which states that both the Great Pyramid and the Sphinx existed long before the appearance of the rulers of the Fourth Dynasty. This stele was never taken seriously by Egyptologists because they would have to admit that all their studies were wrong. For this reason, they ignored this dangerous element, which could undermine their false truths about Egypt. But, in the 1990s, several researchers led by John Anthony West questioned the dating of the Sphinx, and based on the erosion marks, they determined that its construction was almost 13,000 years ago. Hundreds of geologists supported West's report, but official Egyptology pressured the Egyptian government to prohibit geological studies on the Sphinx, and they tried by all means to discredit reports that went against their interests. Subsequently, new details emerged, revealed by Robert Bauval and Graham Hancock, such as the fact that the head of the Sphinx does not match its body due to its disproportionate size. And another much more consistent proof is that the head does not show the same erosion as the rest of the body. Something quite strange. To this, one should add the existence of many ancient texts that claim the face of the Sphinx represented a god from the stars. To all these mysteries, one more should be added. They say that on the Giza plateau, hidden under hundreds of tons of stone and sand, there is a second Sphinx, a twin to the current one. This theory is defended by an increasingly numerous group of archaeologists. But what are these claims based on? They claim that all the Sphinxes found in Egypt appear in pairs, and that if a single one were to appear, it would be an anomaly. To this, one must add ancient Egyptian, Greek, Roman, and Muslim texts, as well as archaeological data that refer to their existence. The writer and Egyptologist Bassam el-Shama has been searching for the lost Sphinx for many years, and he talks about the Egyptian creation myth, where Adam had a son named Shu and a daughter named Tefnut, curiously, in the form of a lion and a lioness. So he believes that the second Sphinx is in the shape of a lioness. On the other hand, he refers to the dream stele carved by Thutmose IV, where two sphinxes are depicted. But this archaeologist is not the only one who maintains this theory. Michael Poe is also convinced of its existence. He claims that there is no archaeological evidence that Pharaoh Khafre ordered the construction of the Sphinx, and he refers to an ancient papyrus where it is mentioned that Khafre found the Sphinx, which means that it is older than the pharaoh. In the same papyrus, it is stated that there was another Sphinx, facing this one, on the other side of the Nile River, and both monuments were built to represent the dividing line between Upper and Lower Egypt. In the access to the buildings and temples, there are two sphinxes, one next to the other, but on the avenue or approach to the temple, they face each other. The Nile is the avenue of Egypt, and it divides the north and the south. Poe, based on those ancient writings, concluded that the Sphinx was built of brick and an outer layer of stone, This layer disappeared after the terrible earthquake that occurred in Cairo around the year 1200. Even the people of the city took its stones to rebuild part of the city. This must have contributed to the rapid deterioration of the brick, and finally, the gradual shift of the Nile River to the east, moving away from the pyramids, would have eventually engulfed the last remnants of the twin Sphinx. Poe refers to the 12th century Arab writer al-Idrisi, who mentioned in his writings the terrible condition of the second Sphinx, compared to the one that exists today. Also, in the 11th century, 1024, Musabahai placed it on the other side of the Nile and commented that it was in a ruinous state. On the other hand, writers like Graham Hancock and Robert Bauval seem to agree with the twin theory, as we find in the book The Message of the Sphinx. They claimed that the Sphinx had a lion's head because 12,500 years ago it was facing the constellation of Leo, a time when the pyramids aligned with the constellation of Orion. However, some believe that the Sphinx had a jackal's head representing Anubis. But, for now, none of these theories have been proven. The only thing we can affirm is that the head does not match the body. Another expert is the Egyptologist Antoine Gigel, who has been living in Egypt for 23 years. She is convinced of the existence of a second Sphinx, based on numerous Greek and hieroglyphic texts. Antoine has concluded that Egyptian civilization is older than the Ubaid period of Sumeria. According to the translations he made of the hieroglyphs, Sumeria and Egypt were at war, and the priests wrote that Sumeria was the place of black magic, and Egypt the place of white magic. These priests protected Egypt from the Sumerian priests with spells. Antoine is completely convinced that the pyramids already existed before the Great Flood. There is evidence that the sea was above the Giza plateau. This demonstrates how immense the flood was. The water reached up to 75 meters high on the plateau. There are ancient English records that say marine fish were found 23 meters high in the Great Pyramid, along with a lot of sea salt. But every time this type of evidence is discovered, it disappears. In the past, many researchers discovered fish remains embedded in the stone of the pyramid, and when they were conducting the analysis, the samples disappeared. Not long ago, Bassam believes he has found the most important evidence of the existence of the second pyramid, based on the results of a photographic analysis conducted by NASA, specifically the image taken from the Endeavour satellite of the Giza plateau. It seems that NASA has colored a supposed structure in yellow, and Bassan is convinced that it is the second Sphinx. Is it possible that Bassan is mistaken? As we can see, all scholars agree that a second Sphinx existed in Giza, but they differ on its location and the cause of its disappearance. Who knows? The important thing is that everyone agrees on the existence of the twin, and that they used brick for its construction instead of stone like in the Sphinx we all know. Is it possible that they were not the same builders, and the second one was a poor imitation of the first, built centuries later? It seems as if its builders had lost the knowledge they used to erect the first one. We don't know. Although, perhaps, the most important thing is that little by little new discoveries open small holes in time for us, which, as we see, continue to surprise us.